Welcome back. And today I'm excited to share the lessons that I got from the very interesting chapters that I read. Did you read them too? What did you think? Let me let you know what I did think about these chapters. So we started off following the death of Sarah. We found out that Abraham remarried again, and he married a lady called Keturah, and Keturah gave birth to 6 sons for him. And he gave, but even though he had 6 extra sons, and forgive me for saying extra, he still gave everything that he had to Isaac. And the Bible also says that before he died, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines with an S, Abraham. What is going on here? So I think I have a feeling that maybe after Sarah died, he just started wilding because apart from his wife, I'm seeing concubines with an S. But get this, even after giving them the gifts, he sent them to go and live in the east, away from Isaac. So he didn't want any of them, near Isaac. So I believe this was him establishing Isaac as the child of promise, just like God had said. He lived for 175 years, and when he died, he was buried with Sarah. After his death, God blessed Isaac, and he lived in a very fruitful land. It took Isaac and Rebekah 20 years to have Esau and Jacob. At first, Rebekah couldn't have kids, and Isaac pleaded with God on her behalf. And then she got pregnant, but then she now had a difficult pregnancy with the twins wrestling and tussling in her womb. And she inquired of the Lord, and he explained why, that there were two nations, the younger will serve the older will serve the younger. He gave a prophecy which was really worrying, and I can imagine her like having those kind of thoughts about the children that she was about to have. But yeah, so we go on to see Jacob, and he was described as when the twins were born, Esau and Jacob. But Jacob was described as having a quiet temperament, but he was also very wily. His name, after all, meant deceiver. And then we saw him trade his brother's birthright for stew. But then I noticed that Esau didn't even seem to really care about his birthright, because no matter how hungry you are, well, no, scratch that, because when I'm hungry, yeah. So, but he did treat his birthright with contempt, but Jacob was wise, and he bought it for him, and he seemed to care more about the birthright than Esau did. And perhaps this had something to do with the prophecy. Now, in chapter 22, did you notice a pattern with Isaac? He followed the same patterns as his father. First of all, he again lied to Abimelech. Let's come back to Abimelech. So I thought, could this be the same Abimelech that Abraham dealt with? Because that means he must be a very greedy man, just always looking for fine people's wives to take. But then I researched and found out that Abimelech may actually mean king. So maybe he was the father, or he was the son or grandson of Abraham's Abimelech, right? But then also he had a commander called Philcol, who the Abimelech had. I struggled with this a little, but I feel like maybe those were names of positions as opposed to their real names, like Pharaoh, was like the position. That's what I think. But same pattern on both sides, because why would that, if that was the Abimelech, why did he do what his father did? And Isaac was doing what his father did as well, by lying to them and saying, oh, this. And then this shows us that Rebecca must have been very beautiful, just like Sarah was. Also, it was a famine that took Abraham into that land, and the same thing, it was a famine that took Isaac into this land. So there were just different patterns that I identified: the famine, lying, that that the wife was his sister, fighting over wells and water sources. Abraham did have there was a dispute between Abraham and Abimelech's people on about wells, and we see the same thing here. In fact, Isaac's was multiple wells as well. And then when I was thinking about the patterns, I also thought about initial barrenness as well, because Sarah too couldn't have children until God intervened. Rebecca couldn't have children until Isaac prayed for her, and it took her 20 years. So it made me think about things like patterns. And then also Abraham married at 40, just like Isaac. So yeah, at 40, just like Isaac. And so, oh, sorry, Jacob. Yeah, these things get confusing sometimes. But you see, there are these patterns that just kind of show themselves, and it just makes me think about truly how, when they talk about patterns is a real thing. Then we see God reiterate the promises that He made to Abraham and Isaac. Um, he made to Abraham, to Isaac, and told him not to go to Egypt but to stay in Gerar. God blessed him there, and he reaped 100-fold in the land. Just like Abraham, he became wealthy in a land that he fled to because of famine. That was the same thing that happened with his father Abraham. And just like he did with Abraham, God again repeated his promises to Isaac at Beersheba, and he built an altar and worshipped him. Isaac also makes a covenant with Abimelech, who was initially jealous of his wealth and then sent him away, but then recognized that that he was blessed and came back to make a covenant with him, which was similar to the other Abimelech. Now let's get to my hashtag getting to know God moment in these chapters. What I came to know is that God is not a respecter of persons or birth order, or social norms. Think about it. He chose Abel over Cain, Isaac before Ishmael, and now Jacob before Esau. We will see how God does not favor those who does not necessarily favor people according to their positions, and he gives the position of honor to who he wants to. It doesn't have to really necessarily be according to order. Now that gave me some comfort, because going back to what I thought about before, where God is not a do good get good God is also not a respecter of persons. Thank you for joining me. See you tomorrow, where we'll share lessons from 27 to 29 in the book of Genesis. Have a good evening.